Hey everyone, it's Ed. I just want to thank you really for watching Lessons from My Mentor. I hope you get something out of it. I suppose you do, otherwise you wouldn't be watching. But I do appreciate it because I know there's a lot of great content out there. I consume a lot of it myself and encourage others to do so. And you've chosen a few minutes to be with me, so super thrilled about that and hope to make it worth your while. This one's a tough one because I don't really have a good answer, but I learned what I did originally from David, the COO at Episcopal Medical Center back in Pueblo, Colorado, late 90s. And it was really how to deal with assholes or jerks or whatever term that you feel most comfortable with. There was a great book a while ago called The No Asshole Rule. And I recommend, if it's something you deal with, to get that book. I remember listening to it on audio. It was really good. Had a lot of good suggestions, a lot better than probably what I'm going to have to share with you, but I'm going to mix mine a little bit with experiences that you might be able to relate to. So my first experience actually ended up being a great story. So there was this person, and again, I'm going to have to be vague because my intent is not to offend anyone or shame anyone. So, but these are all real stories. So this person was just, and everyone knew it, but he was really good at what he did, which is typically the scenario. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. And I confronted him. That's what I was taught by my mentors, to have these confrontational conversations, these difficult conversations. So I did, and he listened intently and gave some feedback like, "Hey, thank you. Wow, I didn't realize that." And then he went and got counseling. So he changed. So with that, I had a lot of confidence, in terms of how to deal with people. But then my next job, man, it's always funny, right? Because as you're watching this, probably the only reason you even watch it because the title, and you're like, I can relate to that. Oh my gosh, what are there helpful tips? And man, I hope I'm going to give you some here at the end. But it's a tough one for me. So then, I go to Nashville and there's one. Why? Why is there always one, right? And then they're usually in a place of significance, someone you're going to have to deal with. It's not like you can avoid it. Because if you read about how to deal with assholes, they'll be like, physical, emotional distance, stuff like that. But man, when they're your peer or very important to your role, it's hard to do that. It's hard to avoid them. So that's one thing you can do if it works out, depending on the situation, is physical and emotional avoidance. The other thing is to confront them, which is going to be sort of the central theme. I already gave you one story doing that. So I confronted this one guy, but he had he was that bully asshole, and he pushed back completely, and it didn't make things. I don't think things got worse, but they certainly didn't improve. So I did what I could, and then I was at university hospitals, and of course there's one there, and there's one everywhere. So again, not picking on any organization. And I've probably been that asshole before too, right? And you got to have that self-analysis too. If you're running into a lot of them, you got to do a lot of self-reflection and surround yourself with people who give you good feedback. So it might be you. So, but here, this was a different situation. Everyone knew for sure that this person was an asshole, but he delivered. But what happened is he hired people and they became his lieutenant assholes. It was weird, the whole culture shift, and I felt bad for them because they probably weren't wired like that, but they were sort of, to survive, forced to become like their boss. So that whole division, which we had to work very closely with. So I just kind of and I was sort of the new person and the young person and this older person and more established, more credible, But then one day, when broke the straw that broke the camel back here was he was relentless with one of my direct reports, to the point that this person came to my office crying. That was like, oh my gosh, Ed, you got to step up and be a leader. So I did a lot of analysis and thinking about it. So I remember meeting with this person, and I'll never forget that scene because we were both drinking coffee, and then I stopped him dead in his tracks. It was like this. Like when I confronted him and he wouldn't move the coffee cup, and I knew I hit a nerve with him, and it worked. He backed off. He was still a little a, not a capital A, and it worked. So that's confronting the bully. So you could have multiple outcomes. I'll give you 3 examples. One is the person, wow, thank you so much, and gets counseling and changes. 2, no way, and they double down on their assholeness. And 3 is they might tone it down. They may still be an ass, but maybe not to you or your team. So it's really, really critical that you confront these situations and don't let them go. So I ran into another situation where, so this is another one you might be able to relate to. This was a peer, but a very powerful peer. And this person would just do all sorts of things. I got to be a little careful on the examples because I don't want any triangulation because that's not the intent. But I remember even when they knew I was on vacation and they knew, which is fine, we all have, executive jobs and you're 24/7, got it, no problem. Knew I was in Europe, so different time zone. And he would call me purposefully like 2 a.m. And I'm a good soldier. I'd pick up the phone. In hindsight, working with an ass, probably shouldn't have picked up the phone. But I did. Kind of say I'm a team player, 24/7, all that kind of stuff. And then just asking me ridiculous questions. It was clear that it had very little, there was nothing urgent, right? They were just demonstrating their strength, their bulliness, that they can make you pick up the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning and they didn't care that you were on vacation and stuff like that. And I fell into that trap and I just and then created it, made things worse. I did eventually. So I finally got, the strength, the courage to confront that person as well, because I asked my other peers, I was like, man, did you ever, is there anyone here that maybe kind of an asshole? And because you have to be careful because you don't want to talk about your peers and stuff like that. So I wasn't very specific, but they said, oh, you're talking about, I said, yes. And they said, oh yeah, we had a come to Jesus meeting, early on my tenure, and that person hasn't bothered me yet. So I tried that. I think it helped for a couple months, but sometimes a person so wired like that there's nothing you can do, and you're at a disadvantage. Again, if you're the newer person, that person's been in that role for 20 years, you're the new person and you're already dealing with all the new person stuff, trying to establish yourself and credibility. The last thing you want to do is pick a fight, with someone who's a peer and has been around a while. So you have to be super careful and very, very strategic in your approach. And then again, you can go to your boss. That's another thing you can do. So again, I'm trying to give you like 4 or 5 things now that you can do. You can go to your boss. That's always a tricky wicket, right? Because, you're not getting along with this person. But if they really are an ass, the boss probably knows it and will commiserate and maybe take some action. But you always feel like such a chump. At least I do. Maybe I shouldn't, but I did, going to my boss and like, hey, I can't work with him or her. There's it's just, in a professional environment, just, I don't know, there's something about it. I always feel like I need to take care of it myself. I need to step up. I'm a leader. I can do this. I don't need to ask my boss for help. That's just the way I'm wired, and it's wrong. I should have been more open to that. So I would encourage you to add that to your list as you sort of work your way up some of these ideas. I would start with the easy ones first, just to see if those make a difference. And then that confrontation, definitely have that confrontation with them before you ever go to your boss, right? Because that's the worst thing. It's like you go to your boss and then they say, well, did you talk to them? And you're like, no. And that's not a good situation. They're going to say, go talk to them first, see what happens, and then come speak with me. I think that's a reasonable ask. So I'm not opposed to that at all, but that's what I encourage for you as well. Ultimately, there may be a time if the person is so difficult, life is not worth it. Your mental health is not worth it. If you're working with someone who's just awful to be around and the organization is not going to do anything about it and they're not responding to you, it's unfortunate it has to be this way, but I don't think there's anything wrong with leaving the organization, because again, you want to go somewhere where the culture is a fit for you, where people are collegial. You don't have to like each other, but you certainly don't need to be an ass to each other. And certainly I know of no values that are hanging up on any of these health systems, any organization that say, our values are transparency and accountability and experiential and being an asshole. None of them say that. So it's always counter to the culture. So it's unfortunate that it still exists though. But as long as there's people, we're all works in progress, and there's always going to be issues. And then the final thing, I did mention it already, but I just want to double down on it, is check out yourself. So maybe there's something you're doing. And I know I'm guilty of that. There's a couple of these instances where it's like, I was just, I just remember one, it was a military one. And there was this guy who was kind of an ass, but I made it worse. For sure, I made the situation worse. So I take some culpability in the whole situation. But I would poke him, and do all sorts of stuff. And if I had taken a different approach, he would have still been who he was, but probably not to the level that he was. So you got to check yourself and then make sure that you're never that ass, right? Sometimes it's easy for us to point a finger at someone when there's a plank in our own eye. So have someone who might tell you, the truth. It's like, hey, how am I? How am I perceived? They do those 360 reviews, which I always thought were pretty good. Get some input from other people. Sometimes they're confidential, sometimes they're not, but those are always good to look at and do a lot of self-reflection. And if you're getting the vibe from people and from spouses or kids or whatever, and 360 reviews that there's something wrong with you, then you gotta check it out. You want to become a better person, a better leader. So take it like as a gift, like, hey, yeah, this can help me get better. So that's really it. You can use Chat GPT, whatever, and say, how do I deal with an asshole? You'll get some ideas. Many of them are probably the same, what I just shared with you, but I wanted to add personal experiences with them. It's not something I've mastered, not something I've done well with, but I have tried a few things here and there. And what gave me the most, what motivated me to keep having those I call them confrontations, but these honest conversations with that person, it was that very first one where the person actually changed. And so I always take on hope that just like if someone came to me and I needed to make a change and I did, that gave me the hope and encouragement that people can change, people are willing to change. But if I don't say something or if someone doesn't say something to me, there's going to be no change.